question 1.1.1 is asking you as a simplified fraction. Remember, simplified fraction cannot have a decimal in it. So normally if you wrote 6.5% as a fraction, you would say 6,5 over 100, but that's a decimal, and we can't have a decimal. So you can get rid of the decimal by using your equivalent fractions and multiplying up. If I double 6.5, it'll give me 13. And then if I double 100, it'll give me 200. If you're not sure how to do that, the other way to do it would be to, on your calculators, because they do it for you, you can type in 6.5%, press equals, and it will give you the fraction form. 1.1.2 is asking you to determine the number of learners who went on tour. Well, if we read, it says 6.5% less learners eventually went to Durban, and the less becomes very important here. So really, we're saying what is left over. So you had two ways of doing this. You could have said, what is 6.5% of those 200 learners? And you would have gotten to 13. Those are the ones who did go to Durban. Therefore, the ones who didn't go to Durban. Therefore, the ones who did go to Durban would have been 200 minus the 13, which is 187. The other way of doing it would be to say, well, if we know 6.5% didn't go, then the remaining 93.5% did go. And then you say, what is 93.5% of your 200? And it would still get you back to that 187 that we're looking for. Then we have 1.1.3, express the number of learners who went on the tour and the number of learners who plan to go on the tour as a simplified ratio. So this is a carryover from the previous question, because your previous question you said 187 went on the tour. So that is the learners who went on the tour, 187. And then the ones who planned to go on the tour, well, there were 200 of them. You can't simplify that any further, so that is your final answer for that. If I could divide both of those by 2 or by 3 or something like that, then I would have to simplify. But in this case, it is already in a simplified form. 1.1.4 says they want you to write down the probability as a percentage of randomly selecting a learner who did not go on tour. Well, this is actually not a trick question, but there isn't any calculation involved because they already give it to you as a percentage. The percentage of the learners who didn't go on tour is 6.5%. So therefore, that's the probability of, out of 100 learners, you selecting one who didn't go on tour, 6.5%. If you did do a calculation and you were doing want to start with a fraction for the probability, well, you could say learner who did not go on tour, well, there were 13 who did not go on tour out of 200, but you'll remember 13 out of 200 is actually the 6.5% that we did in 1.1.1. So it's not necessary to show that, but if you wanted to, you could. Ultimately, we're just looking for the 6.5% though. Right, question 1.2 asks about David and when they were born, and that they need to share out their money in a ratio according to their ages. So firstly, David and Sam's age. This was done just by subtracting out the years. So you were just saying if we had 2023 minus 1998 for David, and you would have gotten 225. And then you do exactly the same thing for Sam, 2023 minus 1993, which would have gotten you to 30 for Sam. With these types of questions, it is quite important to label which answer is which. I know I don't really have space here, but on your answer sheet you should actually show the fact that this is Sam, and then the other one is David as well, just so that it's easy for your markers to find your answers. Then in terms of finding the percentage or the amount that each of them will receive. This one has to do with your sharing by a ratio. So you start with the idea of you having a ratio. And I'm just going to go to a new page for space. Right, so the idea here is, firstly you have to understand that there is a relationship between the two ages. So 25 is David's age and 30 is Sam's age, and that's a proportional relationship. Now it's up to you whether you simplify your ratio first and then you calculate, or you work with it unsimplified. Obviously if you work with it simplified, there are smaller numbers which some people just feel more comfortable with, but you can also leave it unsimplified. So when we look at this, we can say for every 25 Rand that David gets, Sam is going to get 30. So in total then, there should be a 55 Rand. So there's 55 parts. That's 25 plus 30 is the 55. So I need to take 409,750, and I need to say, well look, David is going to get 25 out of 55 parts altogether. And you can do this by multiplying, or you could think of it as, first I need to divide it by 55 to find out what is one part, and then multiply by 25. It's entirely up to you, but when you do that, you should be getting to 186,250. Likewise, when we look at Sam's amount, so we label this as David. When we look at Sam's amount, well, Sam is going to be sitting at getting 30 out of every 55 Rand. So 30 out of 55 of 409,750, and that is 223,500. Okay. And that's how much Sam is going to be getting. This is quite a common question to get. It's a ratio question that does come up quite a bit. So I would strongly suggest, if you're not understanding this section, looking up videos on sharing by a ratio or sharing amount by a ratio. If you're not coming right with that, chat to your teacher about it, because it is a fairly important concept to understand what's going on with this. Right, let's go to question 1.3. Question 1.3, we've got there, firstly write down the VAT acronym in full. You're just writing value added tax. VAT is value added tax. Then they want the VAT amount you paid on the above item. Now this was kind of a trick question, and realistically there should have been something somewhere to indicate the fact that maize meal is actually a VAT free item. You are expected to know the idea that certain basic items do not get charged VAT, but at the same time they should be putting somewhere an indication of this. So realistically though, the amount of VAT that would have been paid on those items would have been nothing, because they are VAT free items. It's maize meal, it's a basic food source. And then the second question there was asking you the total amount you paid for the above items. Now the total amount you paid would have been 38.99 times by 15, and that was 584.85. Okay. What concerned me with this question is, if we look at 1.3.2, this finding the VAT and the amount being 0, I saw quite a lot of people did this question by trying to work out 15% of the amount. Remember, if it costs this, right, even if you think they are going to charge VAT on it, this price would already have VAT in it. So assuming it wasn't a basic food stock item and it was like a dress or a top or whatever it was, then this 38.99 will already have VAT in. In South Africa, we don't advertise prices without VAT. So if this did have VAT on it, you should be then saying 38.99 divided by 1,15. That finds you the VAT free amount. And then once you have that, you subtract it to find the VAT amount. That then doesn't affect your answer to 1.3.3, because you're not now having to add your previous answer. Your previous answer is already included in the 38.99. So 1.3.3 should still have 38.99. It shouldn't go up to like 44 or something, because then you're misunderstanding where VAT is being included versus where it needs to be added. So that was the end of term 1, week 1. It was out of 20 marks in total for the first week of the year.